This episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast is brought to you by On Point Pomade. Keep your beard and hair looking on point with their line of pomades and beard oils over at onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 at checkout and get 15% off your total purchase order. So thanks again to On Point Pomade for sponsoring our show. This episode is also sponsored by the Bean Bastard Coffee. Head over to thebeanbastard.com and pick up any one of their delicious hand-roasted coffees. Coffee lovers will also enjoy their hand-cut and handmade espresso candles and soaps as well. If you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their store located at 448 Elmwood Avenue. And thanks again to the Bean Bastard for supporting this show. The Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. With over 500,000 officially licensed items in their online store, you're guaranteed to find something you need. Use our code BRUTALLY and get 10% off your total purchase order. Now on to the show.
People say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard. And you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Joey Tyler, the singer for the band VRSTY. If you aren't aware of this band, I would be pleasantly surprised because it seems that this band is on everyone's lips right now. Kind of incorporating some R&B style vocals from Joey, kind of mixed with, kind of the more modern, kind of metalcore sound and so forth, and just kind of blending genres. Very much like a band like The Plot and You, sort of like The Word Alive. There's a lot of bands that are currently doing this, but VRSTY kind of, like those other bands, kind of is putting their own spin on what they do, is very much kind of unique unto themselves, and Joey is unique unto himself, and it's been really great to see them kind of getting a lot of big looks as of late, getting to be on Shiprocked, getting on the tour right now that they're on with 10 Years, getting the huge opportunity to open on the Non-Point tour, getting ready to kick off in about a month or so. And it's just, it was really cool to kind of be able to talk to Joey and pick his brain. As I get older, sometimes it's easy to be the old man shouting, "Get off my fucking lawn." But to kind of get to talk to some of these younger bands that are coming up and just kind of seeing that they have this passion to kind of push things in different directions, And I think one of the things about this chat that I really appreciated was actually Joey kind of talking about, the music business and the industry. It's something that we kind of get into the weeds on here on the show. And for someone to kind of just be like, like me saying like, oh, it seems like, bands kind of, or people in the industry will say one thing, but then when you kind of need help or you ask them for help or whatever, it's always a yeah, but. And it's one of those where it was kind of refreshing to have him be like, dude, same, man. Like, sometimes I'll ask people for help and they're like, oh, well, I can't, or this is the way it's always been, and so on and so forth. And I feel like in a landscape where we constantly are, the hypocrisies, I guess, first and foremost of the industry, one of the bigger talking points being, and especially as of late, people finding out that venues take merch cuts. And it's one of those where it's like, it was a hot button issue a couple of weeks ago on Twitter with a lot of bands. I think Tegan and Sarah were the first to kind of post about it. And to see so many bands like, yeah, that's why you got to buy shirts, or let's normalize charging $35 for a shirt or whatever instead of $15 or $20. And it's like, why don't we start the conversation at why the fuck does a venue who contacted you and put in a bid to get your show at their venue and is paying you a guarantee, why do they get a cut of your fucking money beyond that? Like, let's talk about that, and let's try to figure out a way around that. And it was kind of funny taking kind of that idea to Twitter and seeing a lot of the one person on Twitter I reached out to kind of be like, well, that's between managers and booking agents and talent buyers, and that doesn't have to do with us. And it's like, but it does. Like, you're paying those people too to do a job for you. And like, why don't we kind of talk about this? Like, why in almost anything in life do we just kind of want to fix one part of something, but we don't kind of look at the bigger picture of why the thing is broken as a whole? And to me, that was a really fun part of this chat with Joey, and kind of the no fucks given attitude that he has, where he's like, "Fuck it, let's talk about this. Let's figure this out." And I don't know, and I agree with you on some of these things. So it's really cool sometimes to talk to some of these people who I feel like have these bigger ideas and want to be big movers and shakers in an industry that maybe is a little bit outdated in that capacity. And that's kind of why rock music and so forth is so exciting, and it keeps you young, because you got all these people coming in that just want to put their fucking stamp on music and get their voice heard. And Joey is one of those people. And I don't want to have you wait any longer to hear his voice. So let's get into my conversation with him, and I'll talk to you all on the other side of it. Excuse me.
No, it's okay, man. Sorry, I'm a little late. I had a couple of stuff to do.
No worries. I was gonna say, you're out in Vegas today, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
That's a place where you can lose track of time real fast.
Yeah. There's like things everywhere.
No, exactly. That's actually where my wife and I got married, was out in Vegas. So
Oh, nice. How was that?
It's interesting because I seem to have this thing happen whenever like we go on vacations or whatever. Like if there's one thing on the trip that like we have planned, it's the one day that like something inevitably kind of starts fucking with the timeline of like, okay, like we might be late with this. Like, so no one needed to be anywhere at any given point other than when we were getting married, because it's like a quick little ceremony thing. And my dad and my mom were like almost late. Like we were waiting on them, and it was to the point where like the pastor dude was just like, "You guys got a couple minutes, or we got to go like with the person right behind you." And it was
wow.
Come on, man! Like the one fucking place and the one time I need you to be here, like at a specific time. Like you're almost late. Same with like
it always happens, dude.
I was gonna say same with going out to Portland. I had a tattoo appointment. Never had any issues. The one day I had to be somewhere for my appointment, like breakfast was like super slow. A lot of shit was running behind him. Like, of course. Why does this always happen?
Isn't that amazing how like when you have something important to do, everything that can go wrong will go wrong for no reason?
You know, it's kind of funny. Like, I don't know, like I'm not a spiritual person in any capacity, but I've in the last week or so had my first tarot reading done. And it was kind of interesting how very similarly it was to go into therapy for the first time, where it's like, here's kind of some things, and you kind of work, you get the information you're given, and you kind of just see what it means and kind of maybe how it unfolds. But it is kind of funny that sometimes maybe it's a way of life kind of reminding you that things that you put value in maybe aren't as important as you think currently.
No, I agree, dude. That's correct.
So I know the tour is pretty. I think you're only about a week in, or no, a couple of days into it, aren't you?
No. We're like 2 weeks into this tour, I think now.
Okay. Well, so it's funny. Tim, I was gonna say, Tim made the comment that it was going to be hard because you were just literally starting the tour with this, and I was like, oh, okay. So that's why for some reason I was about to say it's kind of weird that you just started a tour and then you already have a day off. So it's got to be kind of good to kind of get into show rhythm for the tour, but then you're like, but now I'm stuck kind of, and I got a day off. So like kind of the momentum's a little taken away.
Not really. So the way it's been on this tour so far, we usually have like maybe like 3 or 4 shows in a row and then like one day off and stuff like that. So I'm not really like too worried about the momentum not being there. I kind of enjoy the days off because I feel like now I care more about how I sound and like how I feel as opposed to how I used to tour in the past. The days off are like very needed.
Yeah. Actually, it's funny you kind of said that. So last night we went and saw the Motionless and Ice Nine Kills tour. And it's kind of funny because like I'm not super big into either band necessarily, but I'm friends with the drummer of Ice Nine. And it was kind of interesting watching the bands and having seen Ice Nine over the last 4 or 5 years since kind of their really ascent. And I had this kind of epiphany about, or a thinking point of like, what is it that kind of starts separating, I would say, local bands to kind of small regional touring bands to bands that are, you know, national, international acts. And something I was thinking of last night is I think it was more of, it feels like a show versus a band playing a collection of songs and then it's done. So I guess when you're saying, you know, you're kind of thinking more about the live show and, you know, preserving your voice and so forth, what is the mindset of a band that's kind of going through it and kind of not just being, you know, weekend warriors and so forth, but becoming an actual band as a career? What does that mentality look like for you?
It's real different. So I can tell you when we first started, it was literally just shows, like collections of songs. Like we would go up there and we're like, all right, let's pick a couple of songs and just play, and then it'll be great and we'll get off stage. And now it's kind of like, all right, how do these songs fit into the set? How do we go about, you know, moving this song into this song? How do me personally, like, how do I connect with the crowd on each one of these songs? There's a lot more to think about now as opposed to before, where it was just random before. Now it's very I don't want to say controlled because I feel like that's like a shitty word for it, but I mean it is very much more controlled now, you know.
This might be kind of an odd question as well. Is it sometimes, like, in light of there's been some bands actually, a band from here that signed that looks like they just broke up kind of seemingly at the first semblance of turmoil within the band. And kind of the underlying statement of it was, you know, this is a business, this is a thing we've all been working toward, and even, you know, all these kind of things. And you kind of realize, like, yeah, we might be really good friends, but maybe we don't make good business partners. And that really stood out to me. Yeah. Because I think it's the part, you know, and I've talked about it on the show a little bit, where it's like, it becomes a business, it becomes a career, and you have to treat it as such. And it's so interesting to just kind of think about how you traverse a passion and doing something for fun to then how serious it has to get all of a sudden. And you're like, fuck, okay. And then maybe it starts turning your friends against you, or you against your friends, I guess.
Yeah, it's weird when it starts getting like businessy, because it becomes more real. And then, you know, there's just more to think about. It's really, 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 really fucking annoying. That's how to put it. Like, the business part of being in a band is probably the worst shit about being in a band. But I think if everyone does like their part, then and just does it well, you shouldn't have an issue with it. Like, we have another reason why we don't have issues. So what I did when I started this band, I got a bunch of people who already don't like each other to be in a band, so that in the future we'll never have that issue of falling out of love with each other, because we always hated each other.
That's a very interesting reverse approach to it.
Yeah, just get band members who hate each other from the start. You won't have any issues.
You know, it's funny. We have a mutual friend who tried connecting us for a little bit, Emily, who had met you on Shiprocked, and I have yet to do one of those, but I've always kind of wondered, what is it like as the band to kind of go and play on a cruise and just kind of be immersed, you know, with fans and other bands? Because it seems like it'd be really cool, but then I would probably be like 2 days into it and just be like, all right, man, I need my fucking space. Like, please, someone, like, just, can we stop and leave and get away from everybody?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you need space. Like, everyone needs space.
Hey, there you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. We were driving and like it just completely cut out.
Yeah, no worries. I like asked my question. I heard you say something, and then it was just like silence, and I was like, I think we're hitting some bad reception.
Yeah, my bad, dude.
No, you're good. So I didn't hear anything you said, actually. So
God damn, yeah.
no, that's fine. That's fine. I this kind of shit happens sporadically. Actually, I guess kind of a changing of a gears thing. You know, we were kind of talking about Shiprock, and I just was kind of commenting like, does it feel as overwhelming as a performer and or just as a patron as it seems like it would be? But I guess kind of segueing to a different topic about Shiprock, you know, it's been kind of interesting seeing, you know, Shiprock's been going on for quite a while. And it's always funny when the lineups get announced, seeing, you know, the bands that everyone is like excited to see. Like, obviously there's the headliners, but I tend to find that a lot of times you see the buzz about some of the smaller bands that, you know, kind of people are like, oh, I saw them open on this tour or whatever, and I can't wait to see them. You guys seemingly were that band this past year. How is it to kind of go do something you've never done, but have all these people like excited to see you in this like different medium of playing shows?
It's literally just super weird. Shiprock in general is just like a super weird concept to me. Like I can't even, up until I did it, I couldn't imagine being on a boat playing a concert. That was already like, what the hell is this? This seems weird. And then, you know, we got on it, and in my eyes, I'm like, you know, we're a super small band, so we'll have like, you know, a decent crowd, and it'll be fun. We're also like kind of on vacation, but the crowd on Shiprock doesn't feel like the crowd at a traditional metal show. There was something different about it. It was really, really different. And then just seeing people excited to see us was like absolutely insane, because I didn't think that anyone even listened to us that much on the ship and things like that. So it's really different. Probably one of the best experiences I've ever had in my entire life, though.
You know, it's funny because the age demographic of people who on Shiprock is so wide, which I find really interesting, to see so many, you know, old heads kind of like on the tour or on the boat that, you know, go out and, you know, see bands like yourself and then essentially kind of follow you whenever you play in their local area. You know, the thing that's kind of been interesting to see, you know, the rise of your band from a kind of national level is to see how surprised everyone is with your vocals.
Yeah.
You know, I think even the thing that's interesting is, you know, a lot of people saying like, you know, you guys are bringing R&B style influences into kind of this, you know, heavier genre that, you know, you're not typically seeing it in. But it's interesting because I feel like you, along with people like Telly, like Tillian, you know, from Dance Gavin and a lot of others, you're kind of in this small fraternity of people who are kind of bringing in these other influences. I wondered how much of it, though, is due to you being just at a cultural melting pot of New York, and it just naturally comes out that way.
All of it is literally contributed to that. I mean, I grew up listening to like rap and like pop R&B. I didn't listen to metal till I was like a teenager. It was literally like nonstop, like Michael Jackson, Usher, things like that. And then, you know, when I got into high school, I got into metal, but I realized when I started playing guitar, like, I guess whatever I had vocally wasn't traditionally what was in metal, besides like obviously like Howard Jones and stuff like that. And I just started playing, man. And then eventually I was like, well, I'm going to sing my way over this stuff. And it just kind of worked. And I get that question a lot. People are always like, oh my God, how do you do that? Like, I have no idea. I kind of just open my mouth and it comes out. I don't know. A lot of it is literally contributed to just being from New York City, man.
It's so funny because it's like I get pigeonholed as this, you know, metal guy, and you know, the other day it was like kind of overcast and rainy and shit, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna listen to like Boys to Men or whatever, and I was listening to like a bunch of like R&B, and everyone's always like, do you really like this shit? I was like, yeah. They're like, do you even like metal? And I go, I mean, I like metal, but like I'm originally from Delaware, and I was like, I grew up on a lot of this like hip hop and R&B stuff growing up, like in the 90s, and you know, also, you know, being in closer proximity to, you know, New York and stuff like that, and Philly and Jersey and all that. It's like they were kind of weird cultural melting pots of styles. I mean, even getting into the hardcore scenes in those respected areas were just so different, and such a, you know, you look at a band like Biohazard, who were kind of influencing and bringing in kind of hip hop into, you know, what there was. There's bands like Candid who are bringing in jazz. So it's like, to me, it's not so weird, because I feel like that's always kind of been the East Coast stamp on stuff, is just kind of infusing all of these things, because it's literally what you're surrounded by, like where you live. So
Yep.
I find it funny that people are tripping out and being like, bro, you sound like Michael Jackson, but like at a metal band. And I'm like, but does that really surprise you? Like, didn't you think eventually someone would do some shit like that?
I don't know. You know what's crazy? I get people ask me things like every night, and I always actually think that I'm like, I wonder what, like, where people think the line should be drawn with like metal, or where, like, in their heads, like, all right, this is what it should sound like, and it shouldn't sound like anything more than this, and why they're so surprised, like, when they hear what I'm doing, you know? Like, I don't think that what I'm doing is so out there, but I also get that it's like, I guess it's a little different.
I guess the only thing I've really kind of come up with for me is that I just feel like potentially it showcases more of how close-minded a lot of people are when it comes to their music or their entertainment in general.
Yeah. Yeah, no, people are very close-minded these days, especially when it comes to music, dude. It's weird. Like, it's weird. People will listen to one type of thing, and at the moment you change it, they hate it. They hate you. They hate everything about it. It's crazy.
What, you know, out of curiosity, like just kind of peeking the curtain back a little bit on your creative process, was there a time when you were trying to find your voice that maybe you were trying to maybe infuse some elements too much and it just didn't work along the way? And have there been songs that have been released, at least maybe that the internet doesn't know about yet, where you kind of did that?
Yeah. Oh, I still do that now all the time. Like, I don't think it's funny because I still don't think that I found my voice now. I experiment with like a lot of like really just weird out there shit. Actually, one of the songs that were released now on the record that was kind of like that. It was a song "Hush." I normally like sing fast and everything else like that, and I like rap and stuff like that. But with a song like that, it was kind of like weird because I wrote the instrumental, and then I'm like, what am I gonna do here? And I just started I'm just gonna fit as many words as I can into like these small verses and do whatever here and whatever there. And listening back to it the first time, I actually really hated that song. I hated it so much. But then, I heard the mix back and everything else, and we added production elements. I was like, oh, this isn't that bad. But that was one of the times where I feel like I kind of overdid it. And it was kind of annoying. But I mean, I still do that, man. I do that all the time. I have tons of demos that I'm working on now for the next record. And sometimes I listen to those and I'm like, God, I'm really overdoing it here. Like, why can't I find what I want to do?
Do you feel that kind of the expansiveness of the sound is something that is exciting and freeing for you because you're not going to be able to be pigeonholed into any one thing? So VRSTY essentially gets to be whatever.
Oh yeah, I love that entirely, and that was like my main goal from the beginning. I remember when we first went into studio, I had told my producer after I gave him the demos, we had a conversation like, oh, where do you want to take the band? The normal stuff, like what's the feeling for the record? And I literally was like, there's no feeling. Like, I just want this record. It has a theme to it, but I want every song to have its own feeling so that when people hear it, they don't necessarily feel like they're hearing the same thing over and over and over. And honestly, I was kind of scared because I thought it wasn't going to work, and then it kind of did work. And now I kind of love it because I'm like, I get to experiment and do all these different things and try all these different sounds, and it works,
It's I feel like that is like the fun thing about a lot of bands like yourself, and I mean, shit, even bands like Knock Loose are kind of even challenging what they do. You're seeing a lot of interesting experimentation, and you're even starting to. I mean, to me, I think this is a great time to be a music fan because there's even a lot of cross-pollination of genres and artists. I mean, was it Ed Sheeran did that like collaborative record where he had like Chris Stapleton and Ed Sheeran and some other people on, and like Bruno Mars, and a little bit of something for everybody. And
Ed Sheeran just did a song with Bring Me the Horizon, and that is the craziest thing I've ever. I never would have thought that would have happened, and yet here we are.
And some people were like, "That was the worst thing that's ever happened in music."
Yeah. You know what's funny about it? It could be taken both ways. Some people might think like, "Oh, this is the worst thing ever," but I know for like some of us, for me more specifically, it's a door, man. It's a door that's being opened for the rest of us, and it's crazy that could even happen. But it did happen.
when you see things like that and you're talking about a door opening, what does that mean to you? Like as an artist, when you see something like that, what does it inspire in you, or what does it get your mind thinking?
It makes me hungrier, man. Like now that I know, I'm like, oh, there's no ceiling here. Like I can just continue to climb and maybe work with like different artists. It makes me want to do that even more because there are artists that I want to work with that have they're definitely not metal artists. Like Doja Cat right now is one of my favorite artists. Period. I would kill to work with her. Would I ever thought it would have been possible? No. Now Bring Me Horizon did that. They did it with Ed Sheeran and then again with MGK. So I'm like, sick. So there is a way to do this. You just have to figure out how.
I think you were kind of starting to see that a lot. Like I was kind of mentioning some of the band people. It looks like you're at least a fan, if not a mutual friend as well, of Kaylee from Rivals.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I look at like what they're doing, and I feel like they're kind of in this in between as well. You know, from what they've done, released the singles and so forth, and Kaylee's been kind of guesting on some other stuff as of recent. So like I saw that and I was like, that might be kind of fucking cool to see like Kaylee on something a little bit heavier than what they've dipped their toes into.
Yeah. It's funny. I've actually spoken to her about like hopping on like a varsity song for the next record already.
That would be awesome.
I love that girl to death. She's a great person. She's a great artist. Like I think she's probably one of the best artists like in this industry now. And I feel like I've told her this and I've told everyone this. I feel like that band doesn't get enough credit, but when they finally pop, man, it's gonna be something crazy.
Well, I feel like the hard part is, having seen them out here a couple of times and gotten to know them as people. I feel like the interesting thing is, and we're kind of starting to see the live scene kind of going back to how it used to be. But I feel like before it would be like, you'd see Rivals, like, they did that New Year's Day tour, and it's like, doesn't quite go together necessarily. And I feel like everyone wants that like perfect package of like, well, here's all my metal bands and it's four of them and they sound all the same. So like, I know what I'm getting. And I remember growing up going to mixed bill shows. And to me, it's like, I get kind of excited about some of these bands that are, like the, what was it? This, the So What Festival or whatever the fuck, the one that's coming where it's, where it's got, hip hop and metal and, everything in between. And it's like, that's the kind of shit. Like to me, like some people look at it and like, oh, well, I'm only going on the metal day or whatever. And it's like, man, go and check out like some cool shit. Go see Trippie Redd. Like he's kind of fucking around and doing some weird shit recently. And you might find something else you like. And at the very least, like I see a festival like that. And then I go, so what collaboration is going to come from that? Because someone's going to see someone and then go backstage and be like, fuck it. Like, let's do something.
Dude, I think about that all the time, especially with like the So What Festival. I have the same thought process for that. Like whether you are a metal fan or a rap fan or a hip hop fan, pop, whatever, I'm like, you can go to this festival and just stumble upon an artist that you didn't know of before and fall in love with them. And for the artist, it'll be, it's better now also because you walk around all day and you're always looking for new music anyway or something to inspire you. Who's to say now, just like you said, you won't see another artist from a completely different genre that you're like, holy shit, I want to work with that person. It makes it fun.
When you go to things like that, or even on tours, are you? Because to me, like I'm one of those people where I feel like I constantly am networking, even if I'm not aware that I'm doing it.
Oh yeah.
Because you never know who you meet might present something down the road. Are you very? I don't want to say business minded, but are you very much that kind of person that's like, I'll talk to anyone, I'll meet anyone on the road because you never know where it could lead me or what opportunities.
Yep, I am 800% that person. You can go ahead and say business minded if you want. I'm okay with that. I don't know, man. I'm just always looking for an opportunity to work with someone. I think the worst thing I can do is limit the people that I work with, because there's always something that I can learn from someone else. It doesn't matter if they're a huge band or a small band. You can always learn something from someone else. And it's also just fun working with other artists who just come in with a completely different mindset to how they approach music.
Is there an example of either being on the road or running into someone that has turned into something that you were kind of surprised, like, man, if I wasn't there or whatever, just this kind of serendipitous outcome?
Yeah, so Notions, who was on our single Finesse, like he was one of the people that I met, just happened to meet him at a show years ago. And he showed me like a bunch of rap stuff. And then he showed me like, obviously I saw his band live that night. And I literally was like, God, this kid is like amazing. It's like, I love to work with him. I loved how he thought. Me and him had a conversation about how we thought vocals should go in a song. And I'm like, wow, we think so different. But his approach actually fucking works. And same thing, I literally just stood in contact with him, and we ended up working together like more. And Finesse ended up coming out, and I remember calling him and be like, hey, you want to like hop on this song? And he was like super surprised, like, you want me to do this? I'm like, yeah, I need, it's not want, I need you to do this. I don't think anybody else is gonna do it as well as you. So that was one of the times where that happens. And I do it all the time. Like if there's someone who's talented, or I think like, is just like hungry for something, or wants to try something, or wants to work with anyone out there, I make it a point to talk to them.
It's so refreshing to kind of hear that, because I feel like a lot of times there's kind of this like gatekeepy kind of shit, it seems like, in the industry, where it's like, you'll hear people say like bands should be more supportive of others, and we should do this, and we should, unite a scene, or we should be united as whatever. But then it's like behind closed doors, like people is fucking phony, and they don't say shit like that. Like they say one thing and they do a completely different. And when you kind of call people out on that, a lot of times the result is just, well, I mean, this is, how it is.
Yeah.
And it's like,
dude, I can tell you right now, from one thing I've learned in this industry, is that a little more than half of everyone in this industry is fucking fake. Like,
oh, yeah.
everyone will say that shit, like, oh, I want to do this and I want to work with that person. When it comes down to it, just like you said, they'll be like, oh, you know how it is. No, I don't know how it is. If you want to work with someone and you want to come up with something new and you want to do it, just fucking do it. Like, stop saying you're going to do it and then just kind of not, and blame it on the way it should be in the genre. Like, that's so stupid.
Yeah, I someone posted, it was like kind of the hot button thing on Twitter probably about a week or so ago, so you may have seen it. Someone was talking about, I think it was Tegan and Sarah's, the tweet I saw from someone retweeting, and it was like, let's talk about how venues take a pay or take a percentage of merch sales, and someone was like, I think it was Shane from Silverstein was like, this is why I urge everyone to buy a shirt when you go to a show. It really supports the band, so on and so forth. And I go, how about we have a bigger discussion? Like, why don't we talk about how shitty it is that a venue is literally paying you, like, signed a contract, put in a bid to get you to play at their venue, and then they basically take money away from you for something that they don't even do just because they're providing space. Like, I'd be like, why can't it be worked into the contract, like, where it's like, if you'll just drop the merch cut, we'll take X amount away, like, off of our thing, because it will essentially even out. And then he's like, well, that's not the conversation, like, there's so much more, buying a t-shirt helps. And I'm like, and I go in right there, like, I'm kind of talking about a bigger issue that you all are literally talking about, which is, why do venues take merch cuts and and like, what can we do? And it's like, why don't you start the conversation on how do you fucking get rid of that antiquated shit? Like, what happens if you don't go, or you don't do, like, there are certain artists that it's like, when you do this, or collectively, if you all work together and pull together and just go, fuck it, we're not doing that no more, that eventually change would happen. But it has to start with having the conversation. And I feel like that's seemingly what I run into a lot, especially since all I like to do is talk like this, that it's like, let's talk about some of these bigger things, because you can sit there and say, yeah, we get fucked because all these people have their hands in our pockets. And it's like, well, how do you get rid of that? What does that look like? Let's have that conversation. And it seems like no one wants to, because they just go, well, that's just how it is.
Everyone's afraid. They think that if you speak up, you'll lose your spot. And they'll be like, oh, well, if I speak out to the venue, this venue won't book us. Or if I do this to this person will book us. And it's kind of like, or you could shut the fuck up and actually start the conversation, because I'm positive that you're not the only band who wants to stop merch cuts. Like, I think merch cuts are fucking stupid, period. I honestly think it's one of the dumbest things that has ever been invented. And I agree with you 100%. I was like, oh, if you want a merch cut, then how about this? How about we negotiate like a lower guarantee, and then we keep all of our merch for that night? Because obviously, as everyone knows now, because every band has said it over and over and over, we don't fucking survive off of guarantees, man. And we don't get paid off of ticket sales. We literally have to be out there hustling our merch and just all night at the table. That's what helps us survive on tour. And then, labels are like, oh, you sold 200 shirts today, so I won $100. And it's like, dude, what the fuck? Like, it's so weird, man. But everyone's afraid to like speak up. And I never understood that.
It's so funny, because like, I'm working with a friend's band. They were like, hey, help us do PR stuff. And I'm like, all right, I don't really know what that constitutes, but I'll do what I can, I guess. And there's been some things like, I'll like I was saying about the show last night, I kind of put that in the group text, and I was like, I know it's probably not financially feasible to bring us like a projector or whatever and basically sync up, your videos or your like lyric videos to what you're playing and kind of present more of a show. And I was like, but let's have the conversation. Let's start talking about this thing. Let's start kind of distancing you from the small regional band to a band that, like, you're going on this big tour and you're starting to get on these big look tours. Like, let's kind of start treating it seriously. Like, how do you guys get over that hump? And it's funny, like, I know that everyone involved is very motivated, but you get a lot of yeah buts. And I'm like, man, even at this level, it's still the yeah, but this thing or this thing. And I was like I made a comment to someone. I was like, hey, X band does these things, and this person, fucking just start asking them just straight up. Yeah. And then, like, I did it on Facebook one day. I just like tagged the person. I was like, oh, it'd be cool if so-and-so, if you could take them out, put in a good word for your friends. And the person was like, what do you mean? I'm like, literally, you can contact your booking agent, go, hey, these are our homies. We're going to put them on a couple dates. We're going to put them on. And he was like, well, it's not how that works. And I was like, you're full of shit, dude. Like, it does work that way. You literally have the power to go, hey, we going to do this. We're putting our friends on. I've seen people who don't deserve shit, like, get better opportunities. Yeah. So fucking just say something. And like, I made the comments to my friend. I was like, just start making it awkward. Start texting him. I go, what are you going to do? Lose the friendship you don't really apparently have? Fuck it.
Yeah. Dude, it's weird. Like, people, there's always a but for everything.
Absolutely.
Everyone will always be like, oh yeah, I can do that, but. And it's like, dude, take the but out. Like, you'll never know unless you fucking try.
I think that's the one thing that's been refreshing to me of seeing, like I said, like your band, when you guys started coming out, a lot of bands are like, a lot of people I saw were like, I don't quite get it. Like, it's not, it's heavy and I like that, but it's also not, and it doesn't sound like anything. And it was just kind of like you kept hearing the but. Well, it's heavy, but, or I like it, but, and it's like, can't you just say, like, just stop right there? I like it. That's it. Yeah. You're done. You don't have to butt it to death.
Dude, it's funny. Like, it's funny how this whole show works, because there's literally, just like you said, there's always a but. But I mean, for me, I don't think about those things. I'm like, if I want to do something, I'm gonna fucking do it. What's gonna happen? I'm either gonna succeed at it or I'm gonna fail at it. And if I fail at it, then I will learn something so I can do it better next time. And I do not care. I don't have time to, like, think about what I can do, but why I shouldn't do it. That's just a waste of time.
That essentially right there is what I ended up going to therapy for, because I have a real bad tendency to overthink shit. And I remember, like, I think the second session, my therapist was just like, why are you, like, she gave me a piece of homework, and all it was literally a sheet, and it had all these cogs, and it was like, write the immediate problem down in the middle. And as soon as I looked at it, I go, I don't need to do this exercise. I get it. I basically am creating all these what ifs, and if I didn't literally start them, then they can't turn anything else. And I need to address the middle problem, which is basically circling and making everything else go. Get it. Got it. And I was like, so be more present. But it's funny that when I kind of adopted that philosophy of just like, stop thinking about all the what ifs and solving problems that don't exist and be more in the moment, that it has kind of enhanced this, as Cat Williams said, like, a little bit of fuck it in you, where you're just like, yeah, man, fuck it. I don't care. Let's just do this.
Dude, I live by that. Like, I'm literally just like, fuck. I mean, this year alone, we've been on tour since January, since Shiprocked. We've gone home for like a couple of days at a time. My label has asked me countless times, it's like, hey, do you want like a break or whatever? Because, you have this. And my mentality is always like, nah, fuck it, I'm gonna go. What the hell is the worst that's gonna happen? Like, I'm like, I A, want my band to succeed, and B, I'm like, why the fuck would I stay home? Like, I'm not in a band to be home. That's just like, it's dumb, dude. I don't know. But I live my life on, like, fuck it. I will literally look at something in the face and be like, fuck it, I'm doing that. I don't care.
Well, I feel like, it's actually nice and refreshing to hear a label kind of be like, are you sure you don't want some time off, in light of, what was it? Parkway Drive, kind of their announcement yesterday, or the press release, talking about how they've been just nonstop for like 20 years, and from teenagers to, now 30 somethings at least. And that they've changed as people, and they're kind of now in this downtime of the pandemic, just kind of being like, I don't know if, who we are or how we were presenting and just on the grind and going, if that's who we are anymore. And that, to preserve us as a band potentially going forward, we need to just not run ourselves into the ground. So kudos to your label for at least asking you that before you start whole nother tour.
Yeah, dude, our team is like really good with shit like that. Like our agents and everyone, they'll present something to us and be like, "Hey, you have this offer, but you just did this tour. It's like, do you want to stay home for a little bit, like or whatever?" They let me like have final say on literally everything that happens, and I appreciate them for it because it actually shows that they care. Like they don't want to see me like get burnt out really quickly, you know.
Well, I think that's I don't know if you're into sports at all, but as I say, I think that's been the interesting thing, with this whole Ben Simmons thing right now, currently, where he's filing to get back the money that technically he squandered away by not going back with the Sixers, and saying that that it's a mental health thing and that he's still owed his money because mentally he was kind of abused and didn't feel wanted and wasn't ready to go play. And it's like, I think, we talk a lot about, again, kind of talking about lip service. A lot of people talk about mental health and, making sure you're okay and take a mental health day. But it really becomes one of those things where when you start exercising that or talking about it, a lot of people are like, shut the fuck up. No.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's funny because I know the story. I'm not like super into sports, but I know the story you're talking about right now.
Yeah.
Because like my TM is like super into sports and my bassist, and I was thinking about that the other day, and I'm like, I wonder what it would be like if there was like an issue like that in the music industry. Like right? Like how would we handle that here?
I mean, we kind of are going through it right now with Kanye.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big Kanye fan, so like
Kanye is Kanye is Kanye. Like he's just that guy's. I feel what's funny about I love Kanye West.
Same.
No shame in saying this. I've loved all of his records that he's put out. I don't give a shit. I don't actually think the man is crazy. I think the man has issues. I think everyone has issues, though. But I think it's less of like people being like, "Oh my God, Kanye is crazy." I'm more being like, "Well, let's just hear him on it, understand, like try to understand what the hell he's saying, because he is the one doing all the work here, after all, isn't he? It's just we're on the outside."
I think the interesting thing that you touched on right there and that no one has seemingly said or looked at. I mean, especially when you watch the Genius documentary on Netflix. Like, I'm not even all the way through it, but something I noticed right away, and I already knew it about him, but to see it like in so many different accounts firsthand, like, as the documentary is going on, is he's essentially literally shouting like, "Hey man, like I'm a fucking rapper too, and I want to get signed to your fucking label. I'm already here, like, as a producer." And it's like, there's not much difference really, just like kind of making it very generic, but it's like, it's the same shit he was doing then, but he has more of a platform now. And everyone's like, "Well, you're crazy." And it's like, my passion isn't crazy. My passion is that I fucking care and you're not listening. And I go, and the more you look at it from that lens and that perspective, it's like, who the fuck wouldn't be mad and angry when you're like, I mean, look at your job. Well, I have an idea and it got shot down, or no one will fucking listen to me, or or I feel undervalued or whatever. Of course you're going to go fucking crazy in some quote unquote sense. So to me, it's like, I see that, I'm like, I just see someone who wants to do something and wants what's best, quote unquote, for him. And it's so misunderstood of, "Oh, he's crazy," or all this kind of stuff. I do, because I know someone potentially will hear us talking about this and go on the far other side of this. I do 100% see why a lot of people are concerned for Kim and all them, because this is, some of the behavior is harmful. So I definitely understand that aspect and I agree with that. But I think the underlying thing of like, this is a dude who his whole life seemingly has been trying to have people listen to him and take him for the artist and as serious as an artist, and everyone kind of always overlooks him for something. And it's like, I would be upset too, and I would probably lash out.
It's almost like it went full circle. When he started out, I noticed this when I watched. So I finished the whole documentary. When he started off, it started off with him begging for people to listen to him and take him serious, because everyone wanted his beats and everyone wanted to work with him, but no one thought he was a rapper. And then he became like the biggest rapper in the world. And now he's back at a point where he's trying to speak, but again, no one is taking him serious. So it's like he's back at the beginning of where he was years ago, and like no one wants to listen. And again, like you said, like with the whole thing with Kim, I think that's a completely different issue. I think his behavior towards her is like super fucking irrational, and a lot of it is like really shitty. But I think aside from that, like, just there's a lot of things like when he leaked his Universal contract. things like that. And people are like, oh no, Kanye's crazy for leaking his Universal contract. And the first thing I thought of in my head was like, are you fucking kidding? You can read the contract and there's proof that he's not crazy in it. How are people still saying that he doesn't know what he's talking about? He literally gave you the tool to understand him right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think so, the thing that's really interesting when you get to talking about someone like Kanye, and it feels to me in a completely different sense, but it almost feels and reminds me a little bit of Michael Jackson to a degree, because the thing that was interesting about Michael to me is he's arguably a great, like one of the greatest singers ever, vocalist. But the thing that was always interesting is like he couldn't make music. And if you watch the This Is It thing, the thing that was like still one of my standout moments in that whole documentary that just is like, wow, is when he's, I think he's going into the intro to, I think it's Smooth Criminal or something like that, or maybe it's Dirty Diana, something. And he's telling his music, God, what the fuck do they call them? Director,
the producer.
Yeah, and so like band leader, there we go. That's it, band leader. So he's talking to his band leader. He's like, no, you got to let that simmer. You got to let it simmer. You're coming in too early. He goes, you got to let it build up. And then like every time like the dude would try to anticipate it, and he'd jump, and he goes, no, you got like listen. So it's gonna be like, and then like he would kind of build the vibe, and it's like he's not a musician, but he fucking like he just has that intangible like he gets it, and I think Kanye is kind of the same. And the thing that's interesting about it is he wants so much more for artists. Like, this whole thing, like people bitching about him doing the $200 stem player to release his music. And he's like, why the fuck am I going to make someone else rich from art that I created, that I paid for, or someone paid for or whatever? Like, give it back to the artist. Like, here's how we do it. Like, it's not going to work overnight, but like, it's like, again, like we were saying earlier about like the whole merch cut thing. It's like, you got someone willing to have the platform at that level to talk and to like try to change something for artists so everyone can like benefit. And everyone's just like, man, fuck you, you crazy. And it's like, God damn it, man. Like, do you see like what he's trying to do? Like, come on, like this is like, you could be a part of something that could actually change the music industry for the betterment of all artists. And instead, like, you're just like, nah, man, you crazy.
Well, that's the thing. When people don't understand something, they label it as crazy. Everyone wants someone else to start the conversation. But when the conversation started, they're suddenly like, oh, that person's crazy for doing that thing that I actually wanted to do anyway, but don't have the balls to do. That's how it is.
It's crazy to think that, we're in this day and age where, like I was reading a Tommy Vex thing. Like apparently he put out a new song or video or something, and it's banned on all social medias apparently. But he was like in his statement, or in a thing he posted somewhere, he was like, oh, but like we're number 5 on iTunes. And then part of me was like, I may not agree with everything that dude says, or, things that I know about him, or I'm like, you're kind of a shit person. But I'm like, bro, like the fact that you just literally said, I can't post my shit anywhere. No one's fucking playing it. I'm 100% independent, and I still got a number 5 song on iTunes. Like, okay, cool. What are you doing then? You're doing something right. Like now I'm kind of intrigued to be like, okay, how are you doing this? What can other people learn from you? Maybe independent artists, essentially at this point, what can they learn from you to do and have some of the same success? Like, you don't have to agree with everyone, but sometimes it's like, pay attention to what's going on and maybe make some good moves on your own.
Yeah, I think paying attention is like a key part of like succeeding in this industry. And like, just like you said right now, you don't have to like anyone. There are tons of bands that I don't like, but I've seen them succeed at things. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder how they did that. And just that alone, I'm just like, I'm going to look into this band more, because even though I'm not a fan of their music, they're doing something that I could probably learn something from and apply to my own band.
In some of the touring, because I know you're getting ready to do a run with Nonpoint, who have been around for forever. What, when you're playing with some of these bands, or you're kind of getting to watch, some of these legacy bands, what are some things that you've taken away that you've been able to apply to your own career, that you've seen kind of like success in almost immediately when you do it?
Dude, well, like this tour alone, like just watching Jesse from 10 Years go on stage every night, like I go on stage and I'm like, oh, I want to put on a performance. I want to do this. I want to do that. Jesse he goes on stage and like he does things. He's like, well, as a vocalist, he's like, you want to give him a performance, but he's like, you have to be able to command the crowd. Like they're already here to see you. You don't have to go ape shit for them to appreciate you. You just have to give them what you want. And when your songs, when your songs are songs that people feel very strongly connected to, it's less about you going apeshit on stage and more about you connecting with them while you're up there. And that's something I never thought about. I watch him every night just do things that I'm like, okay, how could I take like what he does and apply it to what I do on stage so that I am making more of a connection with my crowd, you know, and there's not like this whole like disconnect where I'm just up there like a circus performer jumping off of everything that I fucking, you know, can get my hands on. So it's all, you know, it's all things like that. Same, I mean, there are, on Shiprocked alone, like I spoke to like a bunch of people about like, oh, how do you decide like, what do you want to do like on a song like vocally, or how do you put together tour packages in your head, or other managers that I spoke to like, oh, how do you decide like what bands like you want to pick up and things like that. Like I'm always looking for someone who knows something more than me, and trying to just like pick up on that, you know, that tidbit of information and apply it to literally anything I'm doing in this band.
Do you feel like potentially, you know, I'm not saying like when your career is done, because, you know, hopefully that's for a while out, but like, you know, I feel like in the music industry, it's, you know, the people who are successful are, you know, like some of the best like publicists and managers and things like that are people who, you know, started, you know, in bands and touring and so forth, and then kind of found their way behind the scenes a little bit more, whether it be producing, songwriting, whatever. Is that side of kind of being multifaceted within the industry, in addition to your own career, something you'd be interested in down the road?
Oh yeah, I've actually already told my label this when my career is over. Like I want to be an A&R guy. Like I love the idea of going out and finding bands and putting together plans for them. Like, all right, this is what you have, and this is what I think I can provide, you know, or I can do for you to help you get to that next level, given what you already have. And then, you know, you start to build. I've always loved that whole building process.
I think it's one of those that I a lot of the behind the scenes people I think are very interesting, and a lot of times have wild ass stories that you would have never known, because you're like, oh, like what the fuck do you do? And it's like, oh, I used like my favorite is there used to be this band from like the Jersey area, E-Town Concrete, and their singer Anthony Money, E-Money, he now is like a successful manager of like hip hop artists like Tyga and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
and
sick.
It's funny because a lot of people probably look at him in that world and are probably like, well, what the fuck do you know? And it's like, dude, like I used to be in a band. We did like, you know, Ozfest, and like we used to do all this shit. But it's like the narrative of that guy and that band, sort of, unless you're like super into that scene and kind of well versed, is like, oh, they were like kind of not even a one hit wonder. They kind of were a joke, whatever. And it's like, nah, man, that was a band that grinded, had like put out really good records, did a lot of shit. But it's like that dude found his way in the music industry and has found more fame and success not being in a musician, and probably dealing with a lot less stresses and shit, because it's like touring at a certain level sucks dick, because it's like, all right, like I'm in a tiny van, like, you know, cramped as shit and don't get to sleep very often. So
Yeah.
But that part of the things is, that part of the thing is always interesting to me, of those that I think want to be in it will find ways, like you said, picking the brains of other people and kind of finding a way to be successful, even if it's not necessarily their own musical career itself.
No, yeah, 100%. Like I agree with that 100%. Also, like I'm still stuck on the fact that you said touring in a van is like such dick, and it immediately brought me into like all the tours I've done, and I'm like, God, dude, touring at this level is such ass. Like, God, it's so garbage. Like I will say this though, to piggyback off what you said, you do learn so much shit touring at this level. I feel like you learn more touring at this level than you do at any other levels, because once you get bigger, you have a team now. And you have people who are like paid to do things for you and everything else. This level right here is literally the fucking grind zone. Like God, it's uncomfortable and it's gross, but you learn. And like I can honestly see why like someone in a band would, you know, grinding for so long at this level would learn enough to eventually transition over to being a successful manager or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Like the friends band I was talking about, they've been wanting me to go out with them for a little bit, and I'm like, it's always like the worst. Like timing's never good on my end, where it's like, you know, they're getting ready to do a run, with the VRSTY union, and they were like, you should go out on this run, and I'm like, yeah, like, we can pay you to do merch and stuff. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, but I'm trying to buy a house right now. So like, probably not a good time to be like, all right, thanks wife for buying the house. I'm going to fuck off for like a month and a half. Like, see you later. Like, and it was one of those where I'm like, I do want to go do it. I want to do like one halfway decent tour instead of like the two kind of shot ones I like was in as a band person. And then the one I booked for a friend's band. But it's like, you know, it is one of those things where like being crammed in with like all the gear, all the merch, all that shit, and like 6 to 8 people, it's like, yeah, it fucking sucks. And like, you're just like, this is not comfortable. But it is something to be said, I think, about, you know, being able to endure a less than an ideal situation for something that you believe in. It really, to me, showcases that you're able to put aside a lot of things because you're passionate about something and you want it so bad that you'll put yourself in some of the like shittiest situations, sometimes really sketchy and probably super unsafe, just to go do this thing and kind of feel that excitement of the show.
Yeah, it's funny. I've actually told my friends in other bands and like, even bands that I've met on tour, just like local bands, and they've asked me for advice, and it's like, oh, what would you say like to someone who wants to do this? And I always tell them, like, don't do it unless you love it, because you will 180%. There's no way you're gonna skip this step. You will have to put yourself in uncomfortable positions, uncomfortable living arrangements, all types of shit to ever get anywhere. Sometimes it's not like, oh yeah, if I do this for a year, next year I'll blow up. There are bands who have been grinding at the bottom for like 5-6 years before like anything happened for them. It's like, you have to love this shit and have to be willing to put yourself, you know, you got to put yourself at the bottom. You got to literally, just like Drake, started from the bottom. Hopefully you get there, you know?
And hopefully you're not still rapping about being at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest gripes about some artists is, you know, like 2, 3, 4 records in and you're still talking about the grind and the come up, and it's like, motherfucker, you already got done past that part.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, bro, you came up a long time ago.
That's why someone like Jay-Z, I think his career has always been interesting to look at in recorded music, because it feels like from Reasonable Doubt and all that kind of stuff and all the way to 444, it feels like you're watching and literally listening and hearing the evolution of a boy to a man. It's incredible. Like, but not many people have the longevity to be able to tell a full story like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the music industry is very different these days. Not many people have the capability to tell a story at all.
Lot of truth, a lot of truth in that, actually.
I listen to like more rap and like trap music and pop music than I do like metal, and I can tell you like a lot of the songs are just, I have no idea what the hell they're even saying. I just like listen to it because I'm like, well, this beat slaps, and I guess this mumbling is cool. But there are people who like just can't speak, man. I'm like, okay, well, it is what it is.
Well, I mean, it's funny. I think I pinpointed the moment where, or like the cause of sort of the mumble rap hook centric rap, all the way back to 3 6, because it's like, if you listen to 3 6 Mafia, most people probably couldn't even tell you a verse because it's probably 2 sentences and then the hook already back again.
Yeah.
And then, like, when I figured that, I was like, "Son of a bitch, Juicy J's the reason that music sounds like this."
Yeah, dude, it's funny because like I've told people that, like, I mean even if you think of like Yin Yang Twins and shit like that, like you can go all the way back and be like, oh, there was always traces of this shit like back then. It's just, I guess people didn't do it fully. Now like full songs are like this, and no one's saying anything except for how they were at the bottom and they do lean. But it's like, well, whatever, bro.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been having this I don't want to call it a musical epiphany, but I've been trying to figure out, and I don't even know how to like phrase the question, so it'll sound probably very half-assed in the execution. But you know, a lot of bands, like there's a band like Smashing Pumpkins, you know, like a lot of people love like the first couple of records they put out, and then they're like, well, after this record, band sucks. And it's like, okay, like what is it about music that makes people go, this is great, but it is not good? Because I would like to think that there's something in the makeup of the artist that it's like, you're still probably putting out good music, but why is this? Like, what is it about this that like when you hear this song, you're like, that is such a great fucking song. I understand why it's a big hit. But like, why can't that person write another hit? You know what I mean? Like, that's the part where I get so caught up where I'm like, what is it about songwriting that someone can write a slew of fucking hits, but then it's like the tap runs out, but it's like they still are creating. So it's like creatively the well hasn't run dry. What changes?
Dude, I don't know. I think from a fan's perspective, fans are just they attach themselves to certain songs and certain styles from the band, and they will not detach from that for the life of it. They will listen to one record and like three songs on that one record over and over and over. And the moment the band does anything different, they're just like everything about that sucks because it's not what they like. I think for bands, it's if like for the artists, it's a little different. Simply because, and this is just, I could be very wrong with this. I don't think any fucking artist in the world knows what the hell a hit sounds like. I think we're all just right, real shit. I think we know a formula to it. Like we're like, oh yeah, this is like the pop standard formula or whatever. But I don't think anyone actually knows what a hit is until you hear it.
Yeah.
When you start to lay down like those last like lines of vocals or whatever, and you listen to it back and you're like, holy shit, this is something special. I think that's what it is for the artists. I know for fans, it's very different. Like it's kind of like we're two separate worlds, to be honest.
Well, I mean, entirely. Like I've been talking about another concept of creation of art that I think is so interesting, at least in the musical spectrum, that is just so interesting to me is, we as fans are typically a year and a half, 2 years behind the artist. Like what you're experiencing right now on this tour is potentially informing songs that you're writing, which will be your next EP, next full length, whatever. And we won't, unless for some reason you get to record it now and put it out immediately, like because of the label and the machine behind it, it's like we're not going to hear that for at least a year. So
Oh yeah,
something we're super excited about now, you're probably going to be already over by the time you have to do your press junkets and all that shit, because you're like, well, I'm already writing some new shit that now I'm super excited about.
dude.
So we live in this weird world as fans to artists where it's like you are living in your present and it's going to inform your future, and we are living in perpetually in your past, but then you have to then traverse and go back to your past and relive it like it's your present, even though it's not.
Yeah. Yep, 180%. So here's what's funny about it. We released Welcome Home in January.
Yep.
I hate it. I can't stand that record already. I've written so much new shit. We finished that record in 2020. It took like an entire 2 years for that thing to come out, and then now we have to go back, and I'm just like you said, it's like we're living in we're reliving our past as if it's our present, because we have to go back to all of that now, even though we moved past that and I started writing newer songs and perform those songs like if it's something that I just wrote. Or it's weird, man. It's a very a very weird thing, but I guess that's just the way it is, Look at that's one of those things. See.
Well, that's why that's where to me it gets interesting seeing some bands kind of adopting more of kind of like, I forget who, actually I know Bring Me is and has said they're doing this, albeit very slowly, but I forget, someone was like, we're not going to write a new album anymore. We're going to give you like one song every like month and a half. And to me, I feel like in this day and age now where like record sales are whatever they are, streams or whatever, I feel like that's the better way, because at least then, something that is interesting about that to me is I feel like it allows the immediacy of, you're excited about this thing, I'm hearing it not too long after you're done with it. Mm-hmm. And therefore it allows you to be fresh and excited about the things you're doing. Yeah. And for fans, it allows us to see kind of the growth or evolution of you as an artist in real time, sort of. And, something that I remember Ollie said when they were putting out all these new singles and shit. And he was like, look, this one you might like and you might think is awesome, but the next one you might think is dog shit. But guess what? We're going to put out another one and you might like that one. So it's fine. Yeah. Like, you don't have to like everything we do. And to me, I feel like that is a really interesting and honest approach to creating something that is supposed to be sincere and honest in a commercial aspect.
No, it really is. I mean, I've already had that conversation with my label already, and I was like, yeah, I don't want to do another record. Like, I've written tons of songs, but I don't want to do another record. I would love to put out singles. Like, when I feel like a single's ready, we will go with that, and we will continue to do that. And a lot of that, it's because exactly what they, what you was just saying right now, what Ali touched on, it's just not, sometimes, you write an album and then you wait, you hold it for like a year, and when it comes to it, you're not the same person you were when you wrote that album. and it just kind of feels a little weird. But then there's also times where it's like there's there's no point in writing a record for, or at least is what I think, for smaller bands. I think records are for bands like the Plot and You, bands like Bring Me the Horizon, bands who have fan bases who want large chunks of music from this band at a time. That's perfect. But for smaller bands like us, it's like, dude, you're going in there and you're writing an album. Most people don't have the attention span these days to even get through a full album. They'll only listen to the first 2 or 3 songs.
Well, to be fair, the labels now are also giving away like half of them to build up to the release of a record, and you're like,
Yeah,
I mean, essentially, I've already heard it.
yeah. At this point, they should just not give away the record and just keep doing singles at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
And then just maybe at the end of it, be like, well, here's the compilation of those songs if you want to have them in a nice little folder with an album cover.
That's an interesting way of presenting it, as opposed to being like, here's the singles and then here's essentially the album. You know, I forget who I was talking to. Someone and I were talking about this, and he goes, I mean, you write the music, so it doesn't matter how it comes out anymore. Like, the music's done. So if you just release it single by single by single, and then it's like, well, that was the whole album. And it just took, a year or a year and a half to get it all out. It's like, how is that bad? And
It's not.
you're the first person to kind of say it like that, where it's like, this is the compilation of whatever we would have called it this, or maybe this experience is whatever, and it has a name, either you or the fans give it. But I like the idea of calling it a compilation versus being like, here's whatever the album title actually is. And it's like, this is what this collection of songs is.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the way it should be now. I know a lot of bands are heading towards that anyway. I mean, we're just putting out singles, and then you put out 5 singles, then you give away 5 other ones. Like, this is the album. Or you can just give away all 10, and then just at the end of it, be like, all right, well, this is the collection of these songs, and here's an album cover to go with it. We're going to keep putting out more singles now. Easy. And then you just keep the train rolling like that. This way, also, it gives people enough of you to digest, but it also gives you space to, like, keep writing and keep growing, like, with your art,
Well, I feel like the other thing too is, we obviously know that, there's people aren't getting the budgets anymore to record like they used to. Now it's like a hurry up and just get in and out. And so at that point, I feel like it doesn't maybe add to the stress of like having to create something by a certain deadline. Like, okay, contractually it needs to be 10 tracks and it needs to be 48 minutes and and like whatever. Like, at least then it'd be like, cool, I got 2 songs demoed or ready to go. All right, fuck it. Like, now we're done. We recorded. We'll put this one out in a couple of months or something, and then the next one in a couple other months. Like, and then in that time, we'll write and record and flesh out some other ideas that I feel like it would take the stress of having to come up with product essentially out of the equation.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're not getting the budget to do any of this crazy shit these days. So you may as well just start writing singles and just getting them out like when you can and when you feel like you want it out.
I'm interested, with a band like 10 years, like I said, Nonpoint, you guys are going out with them. I know at least Nonpoint has done a good job of adapting to the new trends. Like, they were one of the first bands to literally use their band account to essentially spam everything. Like, I see every band doing it now, and it's funny because I'm like, man, it became so much that it became almost meme-esque, where it's like, here before Nonpoint comments or whatever. And, to see that band kind of figuring out how to play the game, with getting their masters back for some of their older records and, starting kind of their own label and just kind of learning how to adapt to being, on the internet now as a band. It's one of those where I feel like it's really interesting to see someone, that's so far into the game, kind of like finding new ways to play it and kind of changing and shaking some shit up. But at the same time, like, when you see and get to tour with some of these guys, I feel like, is it weird to potentially, and I don't know how to really ask this, but so without being kind of rude, but is it kind of funny to maybe be like, man, like, you guys are kind of stuck in the old ways of doing shit. Like, you could maybe be better at this if you did X, Y, or Z, or more engaged, or more, didn't think about having to put out the record or things like that. Like, is it kind of weird being sort of the new kid on the block and maybe having these conversations with people and being like, you could maybe fuck around and do this, and maybe it would change some shit for you?
Not really. So I speak to everyone all the time. And everyone who, like, I've toured with knows, like, I'm an open book. But for the most part, like when I talk to like other bands and stuff like that, like I'll ask them what their process is, and like we'll just talk shit about it. And then when they ask me what I would, what I do, I would tell them, be like, oh, it'd be interesting to see you guys do something like this because I've never seen that from you before. Most bands are really receptive. They're like, oh, well, you know what? That is an interesting idea. I will say there can be a few who are like die hard, like, no, I'm stuck in this way, and your way is stupid, and I'm not changing it. But for the most part, I think bands that want to be successful want to learn as much as they can, and they're just open to anything.
I suppose that's very true. It's just I guess I'm looking at that same lens through kind of life and how people are with things. That I'm like, all right, like bands are just a microcosm essentially of everyday life, but like you are all together and you're just in this unique situation of getting to tour together. So it was like, maybe getting around some of these legacy acts where they're just like, oh, I don't know, like I hired someone to do our social media. I don't even have social media. Like you see like those people are like, I don't even got it because like when I started we didn't have shit, so like I don't got it. And I'm almost actually envious of people like that because they're just like sometimes you see some of these press releases and it's like, oh, well, this person has like, no social media. They don't do shit. Like, and they don't want to do shit because they don't have to. And you're like, man, it must be fucking nice to not have to play that part of the game. You're like grandfathered in, literally.
Dude, sometimes I feel like I wish I could just like get rid of all my socials and do like some things the way it used to be done in the past. But then also I'm just like, I pay attention to what's going on these days, and I'm like, I know I can't get away with that shit. So I'm just gonna not try it. I'm just gonna just keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, it's a weird world. Like really even using this software that I'm using now, it's like I remember when because now everyone's like, can you use Zoom? And I'm like, I don't use Zoom, I use this. And someone made the comment like recently, they were like, well, this person prefers Zoom if you can do that. And I was like, well, how about we just go to fucking Skype? I was like, I still have my Skype. It's the same thing. And it's way like everyone knows how to use that. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with Skype. Now we have like 7 different iterations of Skype that people are like, well, I prefer this one. And it's like, they all do the same thing. Communicate.
They all do the same goddamn thing.
Yep. Yeah, we just overcomplicated it.
Yeah. A screen pops up and you talk about it. To it. Shut up. Just get on it. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. But everyone's very particular about their things. But I don't want to keep you too much longer. I know you got, like you said, got a day off, and Vegas is fun and all that kind of stuff. So, what is one of your favorite spots to go to when you're out in Vegas?
I have no idea. I'm gonna find that out tonight.
Are you more on the actual strip or over in like Fremont Street and over in that area?
We're near the actual strip.
Okay. You might find you probably. I guess you could take a cab and it won't be that bad. I was going to say a lot of good spots. I don't know if like when we were out there last year, you had to have reservations to pretty much eat anywhere. So heads up, you might have run into that. But I was going to say, if you do end up over on Fremont Street checking it out and you like pizza, go check out a place called Evil Pie or Rebel Pie. Sorry, Rebel Pie.
All right. I'm going to do that.
It's a good. It's like New York style slices. Like you order by the slice. It's like kind of got like a punk rock kind of vibe bar to it. So it's pretty cool and kind of a little off the beaten. No, I was going to say off the strip a little bit, but off the beaten path a little bit and a nice little spot.
Okay. I'm going to try that out.
Yep. Well, thank you for your time. And hopefully if you guys make it around to, I think you actually are on the next tour, I'm going to say, but not to Grand Rapids, but if you end up coming around, it'd be great to link up in person and hang out.
Yeah, for sure, my dude. Let's do it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, man. Take care.
So that was my conversation with Joey Tyler, again of VRSTY. As you heard, they are getting ready to hit the road with Nonpoint. Their tour with 10 Years is about wrapping up as of when I'm recording this. Safe to say you will see this band hitting the road as much as you can. That was also another really interesting talking point to me was, Joey kind of having the label and his booking agents and so forth kind of reach out to him going like, we have this opportunity, but if you would like to stay home and like a little bit of rest, more than fine with being able to stay home and not be on the road. And I think, fatigue, and just kind of having that awareness for knowing that this band is grinding, they're just constantly out, constantly doing shit. It reminds me of the press release that basically came out with the guys over in Parkway where they're like, look, like we've had some time off, we keep canceling these tours. And it does make me wonder if like there's something, if that has been part of why those tours haven't happened. And it's one of those where, you know, I feel like we constantly, especially on this show, we talk about therapy, we talk about mental health and stuff like that. And I feel like it is one of those things where seeing at least their label and seeing bands actively talking about these things, I think is phenomenal. I think it's huge. I'd rather see a band come back reinvigorated and have the passion and the desire to play and be out and tour than to see a band run into the fucking ground because they need to survive and make money doing this and kind of come to hate it a little bit. I mean, as much as I love Every Time I Die, seeing how that band, I guess for lack of a better term, driving themselves into the ground from just all the constant touring and not taking the time to kind of deal with the inner struggles of whatever they're facing, I'd much rather have the Parkway Drives and even, you know, the label that VRSTY's on and so forth kind of preemptively get in front of it instead of just having these bands burn themselves out. So that was something that I've kind of really been thinking a lot more about, and I really commend Joey for kind of knowing that he's putting himself in this. But like he said, if I want to achieve what I want to, then I got to grind. I got to do these things, and I want all the momentum. I don't want to be home. And it's funny, I was reminded of when I hung out with Patrick from Ice Nine Kills a couple weeks ago, and, you know, he had made the comment that essentially he, between just the work he does and all that kind of stuff, he just lives in like Airbnbs and stuff because he's never home long enough to, you know, pay for a place to stay. And I just saw an article come out that the singer of, I think Brent Smith is his name, I think, from Shinedown, essentially does the same thing. He's like, I'm never home. I tour all the time and I'm on the road. So like, there's just no point in owning a house and paying all this money for a place that I'm never at. And I kind of love that mentality of just like band people being like, I'm committed to this life. I'm committed to this. It is all I know, and I'm going all in on it. So it's really inspiring and really refreshing to, like I said, talk to Joey, to see a younger band that feels new and young and exciting, but also kind of has this old school approach to everything, and it feels like familiar in an odd way. So I'm very much looking forward to hopefully catching a show of theirs soon. By all accounts, a friend of ours, a mutual friend that we were talking about in this episode, has been raving about this band since seeing them on Shiprocked and seeing them a few other times. So I am very much looking forward to catching these guys live and kind of becoming a convert in the live atmosphere of this band. I already like them on record, and literally I'm on record saying I like them. So let's start wrapping up this episode. If you would like to keep up with Joey, you can find him on Instagram and Twitter at Joey Tyler. That is Tyler, TYL3R. And if you'd like to keep up with VRSTY, you can find them everywhere at varsity.nyc. That's VRSTY.NYC. Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also find them on varsity.nyc/home. That is their website landing page for everything. If you would like to keep up with us, it's simple enough. Find us at Brewspeak Pod on everything. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Like, follow, share, retweet, whatever. Whenever an episode comes out, if you can share it or support it in any way, shape, or form, please do. Speaking of support, we have a Patreon. We post all of our episodes early. That is one of the awesome things that we do over there. Sometimes I do some other side podcasts that only exist over there. There are probably 5 or 6 episodes that have never been aired, that will never be aired, and exist only on the Patreon as well. And I also sometimes do weekly playlist breakdowns and stuff. I haven't as of late because I just honestly haven't been listening to a lot of music. But I have been getting back into it, so I probably will actually start making those again. Talking about getting burned out and stuff like that, toward the end of last year, I was suffering a little bit of fatigue of just spreading myself everywhere. So thank you to the support of the patrons we have. It's really great having that support. All the money goes right back into this podcast. And speaking of support for the podcast, I want to thank rockabilia.com. Use our code BRUTALLY at checkout. Take 10% off your purchase order. Got a fun little project that Frankie from Rockabilia and I are going to start doing. And On Point pomade, keep your beard and hair looking on point. Use our code BSP15. Take 15% off your total purchase order. And last but not least, The Bean Bastard. Go to thebeanbastard.com. Pick up some delicious coffee. And if you're in the Buffalo, New York area, head to their brick and mortar store. It is a lovely little coffee shop. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will talk to you all next week, where our guest is Chris Davis of The Ghost Inside. I'll talk to you all then.